Closer to home, we're covering a major meeting at the border. Governor Abbott was in the Rio Grande Valley today with former President Donald Trump. The event is part of the governor's push to have Texas build new sections of a border wall. Governor Abbott says he wants our state to finish what President Trump started. They also attended a roundtable discussion with local law enforcement officials to gauge the impact of people and drugs coming into Texas. Jason Wheeler has been following developments on the border. He joins us now to break down what happened today.
Okay, so Chris, you can call it a wall, you can call it a fence, whatever you call it though, that barrier along the border was the focus of today's meeting as Governor Abbott and former President Trump used data on unauthorized migrant crossings to attack President Biden's immigration policies. During the first stop of the day, the governor and the former president were joined by top law enforcement leaders. The governor, along with Texas DPS and 2 sheriffs, talked about an increase in drug overdoses here in Texas. They say that is directly tied to border security and the amount of drugs coming from Mexico. Then Mr. Abbott and Mr. Trump took a tour of the existing border wall, or fence, whatever you call it, as the state continues to try to crowdfund donations now to pay to complete that construction.
Look what you see. You see an unfinished border. This is Biden's fault because President Biden is not continuing what President Trump began. President Biden needs to start right there and finish building the border wall that President Trump began putting back up.
President Biden is not going to do that. Today's event had all the feels of a campaign rally there in the valley. Now, according to information that we have seen so far, the state has set up that crowdfunding site. According to the Texas Tribune, they've received about $450,000 in private donations in a week. It's a lot of money, but you're going to need a lot more than that to finish that construction, and it's not clear yet how much the wall the state plans or can afford to build. Now, even though the state is diverting money from the corrections budget and raising money from taxpayers, construction can't begin on this immediately. There are still several steps the state would have to take first, and ultimately it could all end up in court with Governor Abbott and the federal government facing off. Here's some additional context, by the way, about what's happening along the border. The number of unauthorized crossings is up. Border law enforcement encountered an estimated 180,000 migrant crossings in May. Just for some perspective, the highest recorded number of monthly apprehensions during the Trump administration was nearly 150,000. Chris?
3,000 more people. That's fairly significant. Thank you, Jason. State Democrats called the visit a political stunt and urged the legislature to focus on issues that actually matter. And a group called Texas Rising held a counter rally to chastise the governor.
Abbott can somehow find the time and the money to visit for a useless wall while working to block Medicaid expansions, restrict our vote, ban abortions, criminalize trans children, and lead our state into lawlessness by removing protections that will only increase gun violence.
Texas lawmakers will be coming back to Austin in a week or so. They'll kick off a special session of the legislature on July 8th.